This is a Media Lab podcast. Welcome to Putting It Together, the podcast that goes through the entire body of work of Stephen Sondheim, show by show and song by song. My name is Kyle Marshall, your self-described Sondheim expert. I am so excited to jump into this episode with Matt Koplik, returning guest onto the show. I think we have a really deep conversation around, of all things, Pirelli's Miracle Elixir. Not that I think it's a bad song, but it's one of those songs, too, that I honestly thought I was not going to be able to fill an entire hour talking about, but here we are. Before we jump into this week's episode here, though, I do want to talk about a message I got over on the Patreon. This is from Todd. Just listen to your On Miss episode. And like I always seem to, whenever I revisit a Sondheim song, I discovered something I'd completely missed in the 1,000 other times that I've listened. I think you might have missed it too. Or, with your love of great rhymes, you certainly would have pointed it out. As you read the lyrics, you omitted the word "oh" from the line, "Look at you looking so pale and ivory-skinned." He's right. It should be, "Look at you looking so pale and ivory-skinned, oh." There's actually an O at the end of that line. That's perfectly understandable because that O is seemingly insignificant to the movement of the song and moment and doesn't even feel necessary to the phrase before it. But I noticed it's an omission, and that made me go back and look, and sure enough, it's there to make the rhyme with window a few lines later. This is a great call out by Todd, and I love that he pointed this out here for me. So once again, Sondheim showing his dexterity for rhyming, even when it doesn't feel like he's actually rhyming anything. Anyways, let's get into this week's episode of Pirelli's Miracle Elixir with my guest, Matt Koplik.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Do you wake every morning in shame and despair to discover your pillow is covered with hair? What ought not to be there?
Matt Koplik, thank you so much for joining me here again.
Thank you for having me, Kyle.
I said it right as you were trying to swallow something you were eating, so I apologize.
I know, it was my chip. I thought I was going to consume it faster than I did. And I tried to be professional, but then you just read me for filth. So it's fine. Here we are.
Exactly. No. No one gets to hide behind the non-video version of this podcast. I have to tell you something. I have not admitted this to you before, but I had someone reach out to me when I was a guest on your podcast, Broadway Breakdown.
Not familiar.
And was like, not familiar. And they were like, "Kyle, you seem to be like a lot more, you say a lot more like dirty words and like are like overtly sexual on Matt's podcast. Like, what's the deal?" I'm like, it's him. I blame him. He pulls it out of me.
100% me. Also, like, you come into my house and you play by my rules. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm on this podcast. Right. I come on this podcast. So last time I was on here was Pacific Overtures, which I felt pretty good about considering the song we were discussing. Like, I could have gone a lot raunchier considering who I am and what the context of that song was, and the subject matter. But I feel like we did okay. I mean, we obviously talked about some risque things, but that's what was on the fans. So yeah, you come back on the podcast, you're going to say a lot dirtier words, like, and it'll have nothing to do with the subject matter. We'll talk about like Agnes of God and every 4-letter word you can think of and sexual position will be mentioned.
That's right. I have my dossier. I have everything listed out here that I want to discuss. Every dirty thing that's come to my mind. I think you made the joke potentially either on your show or the last time you were on here about I was going to make you come on to talk about Pirelli's Miracle Elixir. And that's what I did. So I made a joke and you went, and write that down for receipts. And there we go. But thank you for doing this. I mean, of course, we know from your own show, like how like smart and deeply knowledgeable you are about Broadway and what's going on in the industry, that sort of stuff. You know, you're passionate about Sondheim. You did an entire season on your show about every Sondheim show. Mm-hmm. But just to reiterate it, what is your history with Sweeney Todd specifically?
I don't know if I mentioned it on the Pacific Overtures podcast, but my original introduction to it was actually through my grandmother, who walked out of the original Broadway production with my grandfather. The story she likes to tell is they walked in and Hal Prince had grave diggers, digging a grave as audiences came in. And my grandmother went, they're digging graves. And then right before Priest started, she went, oh, they're going to eat those people. And just like, there's two stories I talk about are my grandmother, my grandfather on my father's side. They go see Sweeney Todd and a little priest happens, one of the greatest act-film finales of all time. And they go, we're leaving. And then my mother's father and mother were at the opening night of the original production of A Little Night Music. And Weekend in the Country happens. Again, one of the greatest act-film finales of all time. Yeah. And my grandfather goes, we're leaving. So
I love that. I love that there was at least someone in the audience where Weekend in the Country plays and we're like, none of that, please. Yep. Just leave.
I will have none of that. I will go across the street to Two Gentlemen of Verona. Thank you very much.
That's right.
Exactly. Yeah, my family is like a bunch of theater people, so I was surprised that they were so anti-Sondheim for that decade. It was like basically just my dad holding the torch for him. But yeah, so that was my intro. So I never really listened or saw it until I was at theater camp and I was doing West Side Story and we shared a theater with Sweeney Todd. And the way that Stage Door works is you watch each other's dress rehearsals when you share a theater. So I saw their dress rehearsal and like the moment it started, I was into it. And we're talking, like 14 to 18-year-olds with just a piano and like a set made out of nothing but wood. And I was, head over heels in love with it from the moment it started to the moment it ended. Mm-hmm. I listened to 2 episodes of this series already, so I will tell you, I did not know the Becker woman surprise. I didn't clock it till they do the big reveal when he goes, oh no. That's when I clocked it. That was huge for me. I then went straight home. I got the cast album. I got the George Hearn, Angela Lansbury DVD. And then I saw the revival with Michael Cerveris. When the movie came out, I saw like 5 times. And then I saw it done at the New York Philharmonic with Emma Thompson and Bernd Terfel. I think that's how you say his name. And then I saw the Pie Shop production twice. And that is my Sweeney.
Right. So you don't like it that much is what you're trying to say.
Oh, it's garbage. It's a flop. It's trash. Yeah. I mean, give me Finding Neverland any day over Sweeney Todd.
Any day of the week. Yeah. Out of all of those, is there one that's like, this is the best that you've personally seen? Let's refine it for that way. Like one you've actually personally seen.
Of the ones in person, the Pie Shop was far and away my favorite. It was so, I love the grandeur of sound that Sweeney Todd can provide, but it also still needs to be terrifying and it needs to have a pulse and a motor to it. Something I didn't like about the New York Philharmonic one was that it just went on so slowly and was so many times was so pompous about it. Like, I feel like also as fans, and because of Sondheim and his greatness, we tend to get a little precious with the work and we analyze every detail and we want, we go so deep into stuff that we forget like this needs to be a living, breathing thing. It needs to, come alive and keep moving. And the Pie Shop production for me was just like, yeah, no, pedal to the metal. Let's do this. And I loved every second of it.
Something that I've notated here with previous guests is specifically Bernstein later in his career of him coming back to West Side Story and making it as slow as he possibly could. It's like, dude, let's speed this up. We don't need to have this belabored.
Yeah. I mean, well, so I can't tell if that was Bernstein in his age because there's a video of him conducting the Candide Overture. I think like he's in his 50s or something. And he's like bouncing up and down, having the best time ever. And it's going fast. He is like, that dude is on cocaine. It's great. But there's something about these men in the later parts of their lives when they get to be in charge of productions, slowing everything down so everyone can understand every note and syllable that they deigned to write for us. So like the Arthur Lawrence Gypsy was the longest show I've ever seen. And it wasn't even that long. It was just like every line of dialogue was stretched out. So we as an audience could go, oh yes, Arthur, that was a wonderful line. Keep going. And
golf clap and yeah.
Yeah. And what I love about Sondheim when he was alive, which is still so crazy to say, is that he wasn't ever really precious about his work. He was proud of it. And, he could tell you all about his intentions, but he was just as proud and vocal about his contributors and his collaborators. And he won't take credit for stuff that he didn't come up with. So like people ask him about character development. He's like, I didn't write the character. It was the book writer. Like my job was to flesh them out and all these other things. And I think that's why any notes he ever gives for shows, he's always like, here's who they are as a person. Don't worry about like making sure that, this song, every nuance gets heard. He's like, live it and breathe it. I want the audience to feel bowled over at the end. which I always appreciated about him.
I would say that as far as the versions that are readily available for people to go and watch, the biggest one that's easy to get is the Tim Burton film version with Johnny Depp. And partly, I want you to speak to this. I have given kind of like a half-hearted defense of that film because I personally like it, even though I know that's a counter opinion to a lot of like deep Sondheim fans. But maybe you can be more precise with why you think that movie works.
Well, first of all, Sondheim loved the movie too, so everyone can suck it. He especially loved Helena Bonham Carter, so again, everyone suck it. I'm sorry, I said I wasn't going to be too crass on this episode, but
I've bleeped you for the last 2 minutes, so it's fine.
From start to finish. First of all, it's one of the few movie musicals of the last like 20 years where I think they build an environment where singing makes sense. Which, I mean, much as I love Chicago, they kind of skirt around that issue by having everything take place in Roxy's head. I did really love the new West Side Story, but I don't think that Spielberg created a world where singing and dancing necessarily makes sense. It was just a world where that happens. They were so belaboring the point that it was so realistic and gritty that like sometimes like that dance move, where does that come from? Burton created a heightened environment of London that was honestly more like a black and white pulpy horror film, which is sort of what the show was always intended to be. That, you know, no matter what your thoughts are on the actual vocal performances, anytime they do sing, you're never like, I don't buy this moment. You can maybe not like the sound of the voice, but you never go, I don't buy that. It always works really well. I think it's also visually stunning. There are some interesting points of view that the movie makes. One of my favorite things they do is with the character of Joanna. So people tend to bemoan how the ballads get cut, how there's no major chorus. And we'll talk about choral work with the show in a minute. With this song, people talk about the cutting of Kiss Me. I talked about it on my podcast when I did Sondheim. Like, you can see in a lot of his shows for a time, he kind of had a very pretentious view of love, I want to say, of like innocent love, of young love. It was always really hard for him to write earnest love lyrics. If there was a love song, it usually was either it had a sarcastic tone to it, or it was characters that he thought were kind of idiots. Like Anthony, God love him, handsomest dum-dum around in both the stage show and the movie. And Joanna in the stage show is also kind of a dum-dum. You know, the one bit of agency she has is when she, spoiler alert for those who don't know the show super well, she grabs Anthony's gun and she shoots Mr. Fogg. But the movie, what I always liked was that they kind of implied that Joanna doesn't love Anthony. I think she likes him fine. I think she thinks he's cute and he's nice enough. But they never get any scenes in the first half of the movie. We only just sort of see her plotting her way out. Gets him the key, all the stuff. He's a way out for her. And then when she goes into the insane asylum, again, spoiler alert, everybody, she comes back out and she's changed. She's darker. She's got a bit more of a death wish, which I love. And they have this great interaction that's only in the movie where she's like, so we run away and our dreams come true. And Anthony's like, yeah, sounds good. Sure. Hope so. And she's like, yes, yeah. And she's like, no, that's not how life works. And when like she goes into Sweeney's chair, she doesn't like really fight too much. She's kind of like, yeah, I've had a kind of rough life. If this is the end, so be it. I love all those kinds of things. And I will also argue that the ballads would never have actually worked in a movie because they are such a theatrical storytelling device. And anytime anyone tells me, well, when done right, I'm like, that means nothing. That's an empty phrase. You know, the movie has to keep going. And the only reason that the ballads work in the stage show is because we are more patient in live theater. We allow more imaginative theatrical storytelling devices. Film is more unforgiving. So you kind of have to just keep things moving. And I think that the movie does that. I also think the movie has a lot of terrifying moments, which sometimes the stage show doesn't always do because you have that distance. I also think that it's the best, again, spoiler alert, everybody, it's the best judge's death of all the versions that I've ever seen. I think Johnny Depp is incredibly frightening in that scene, especially when he reveals himself. It's like there's a shot that Burton has of Johnny's face when he realizes that the judge realizes who he is, and he goes, he truly looks demonic. And no matter how many times I see the movie, I always get so uncomfortable in the best kind of way. I mean, if I had like one major fault is that, well, I do think that the orchestral stuff in the movie sounds great. Part of me would like a little bit more singing in it. It's a little more whisper singing. Burton really wants it to be intimate, which I understand and I appreciate. But I'm also not precious about it because we have at this point now 3 other video recorded versions of Sweeney Todd where there is a lot of singing. So like we have a 4th one that's, a little less singing, a little more chilling and intimate and scary. And I like it.
Yeah, I would just echo most of what you said. I think adaptations are so interesting for me to analyze because in that movie, at least for the vast majority of it, I'm like, yeah, I get it. I get why you would cut this and why this doesn't really belong here, or we have to shrink this down. Yeah. Especially this song, right? It's like, do we need 4 or 5 minutes of them doing this? No. We get it after the first chorus. We can kind of move on to the next thing.
There gets to be a point where Sondheim starts showing off with this song.
Well, true. And I think that the big thing for me too, this is such a dumb observation, like so many people have been able to make this before, but something I fully accept it as I've started being able to go back to live theater in my city is, boy, your suspension of disbelief is just so much higher in a theatrical environment, right? It's like, oh, this sash is now this belt and it becomes this thing, or like there's no set behind us, but we're now in Paris. I'm like, oh yeah, I can make up Paris in my head and we're there. You just do it so quickly. Whereas in a movie, it's like, no, you are physically, because they have to show it to you. It's like you can't like just disregard things as easily. So you have to be very literal in a movie. It's like, no, this is where we are. This is what we're doing. Yeah. And so anything that goes fantastical, it's like, okay, we have to like rein this in maybe a little bit.
Yeah, you either have to rein it in or you have to go super far.
Yeah, super
the other
far.
way. Like you have to go like super Moulin Rouge, or you go, other way around. And I think a lot of movie musicals of the last 20 years have actually gone more realistic when they should have gone more heightened theatricality. I think Sweeney Todd, the movie version, actually has a nice balance because, again, it is a heightened world, heightened visual style with more sort of chillingly intimate performances, which I think works very nicely. Listen, would I have loved to have seen a Toni Collette, Mrs. Lovett, directed by Sam Mendes? 100,000%. But I'm not mad about the movie version that we have.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. Now, you have spent the time. This is going to sound like I'm stalking you, but you've spent some time.
Podcast, Kyle. That's all.
I know. But I was going to say that you've spent the time watching, I think, every movie musical from the last 20 years, or at least since like the year 2000 or something.
Yeah,
like
the
that.
21st century,
yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've kind of made a list and everything like that. So what are those top 5?
Well, first of all, Kyle, just so everyone understands that I it's not that I have all this time on my hands. I had a breakthrough case of COVID right before Christmas, right. And I happened to be in quarantine right before the CDC was like, let's shorten quarantine days. So I had a full 10 days and I was going insane. So I decided I was going to watch all the movie musicals of this current century just to, rein it in a bit. And some things were much better than I remembered they were, and some things were much worse. The top 5 in order, actually, I'll go from 5 to 1. And I know number 5 is going to be controversial for people, but Sweeney was number 5. And it was controversial for some people because it was 2 places above Tick, Tick, Boom, which I think is very well made, but I don't think it's necessarily exceptional, but I'm in the minority with that. I know I'm also in the minority about George Hearn. I don't love his Sweeney. I think he comes in a little too hot. He comes in at an 11 and I need him to start at a 6, but that's a me thing. Anyway, Sweeney is 5. 4 was The New West Side Story. 3 was Hairspray. 2 was Hedwig, and number 1 was Chicago, which is just it's a perfect movie. There's nothing wrong with it. And that's
absolutely no notes. Yeah.
No notes. And I made the joke of saying when I made the list, like, these aren't my opinions. These are factual. This is science. I collected the data.
Fact.
Yeah. Sciencey science determined it. So anytime anybody was like, interesting list, but there's some things I would maybe move around. I was like, I'm sorry, what part of definitive, factual, and science do you not understand? This is backed up by chemistry, atoms, biology, and data.
All of my footnotes are right there. I'm sorry. That's just what it is.
I'm sorry. Facts are facts.
It is weird. This is, again, it's going to sound like I'm trying to impress you, but I basically agreed with the entirety of your list. I'm also the person, and people get weirded out by this because I'm such a Sondheim fan, that I love Hairspray. I think that movie's great.
Hairspray is wonderful. I've never heard anyone say that it wasn't, or at least, I mean, at the time it came out, I know there were some detractors from people who love the stage show. The movie is fantastic. If I had one major note is that it kind of loses steam in the third act, right around I Know Where I've Been up until about Without Love. That time is like a little slaggy, but once they, I mean, that You Can't Stop the Beat is just so fantastic. They do it so well. Like they really stick the landing hard. One of the major things with the movie musical is you have to open strong and you have to end strong. And Hairspray does both. My biggest issue with the new West Side Story is I actually think they kind of rush the final scene and it loses some of its potency because of that, which is such a shame because so much of it is fantastic. I also think the same thing about Tick, Tick, Boom. Not that like they rush it, just it's a little too. And then he made art and we all sat in the audience and we went, Jonathan, you did it. You made the art. And I sit there and I'm like, I want to make a video of like every person in the audience at the end of a movie like Tick, Tick, Boom, where it's just like the parents who nod their heads being like, we knew you had it in you, kid. The ex who stands at the back of the theater with their arms crossed being like, I don't want him to know that I'm here. And it's because it's not just Tick, Tick, Boom. So many movies do that. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I do blame you though, Kyle, because you noticed that I did not include Repo the Genetic Opera. No, that wasn't you. That was somebody else.
No, that was someone else.
That was someone else. Never mind. I take that back.
I don't blame you. No, I noticed that you, and I fully admit I have not seen this movie, but there is a production called London Road that I know was a production and then became a movie. London, but I have not seen it. Has Olivia Colman in it though, so I want to see it.
Yeah, I didn't know they made a movie version of London Road, but so you brought that to my mind. Sorry, I made a message. Someone else brought up Repo the Genetic Opera, but you did bring up London Road, so I put the two together. So no blame on you. Although I did have a friend message me after you commented that, and they said, Matt, you have to watch it. It's insane. And I look forward to it because
that is what I've heard. That is like it is a bonkers movie to watch. So
I can't wait. I can't imagine it's any more bonkers than Repo. I would just hope that it's more interesting. Like Repo is both crazy and boring, which is almost impossible to pull off.
Yeah, which is unfortunate there. But I'm also like ride or die with Hedwig any day of the week. I love that movie too. I think it's
Hedwig is an absolute masterpiece. The only reason why it's like 2 to Chicago is like Hedwig. I can understand if someone maybe doesn't like it, and I think maybe there might be a point here or there. I'm like, I might change that. I have absolutely no notes on Chicago. You cannot like it, but you cannot tell me that it's bad. It's objectively impenetrable. But again, that's science. Let's talk about Pirelli.
I was going to say, talking about impenetrable, Pirelli's Miracle Elixir, which I always want to call Magical Elixir. I'm probably going to make that mistake multiple times in this episode, where I always say magical instead of miracle. Hi everyone, just Kyle breaking into the conversation here again to tell you about some of the people and organizations that help this show continue to go. If you'd like to help support the show for absolutely free, you can give a rating and review on whatever app you use for podcasts. It's greatly appreciated, and if you'd like to help monetarily, which will only help to grow and make this show better, you can do so over at our Patreon page. Please do not donate if it impacts you negatively financially. And of course, I also need to give a huge shout out to the God That's Good tier from Patreon, the Suave Sextet of Jack, Todd, Carrie, Whitty, Louise, and Christopher. Putting Together is also a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. The Alberta Podcast Network promotes and supports Alberta-made podcasts and connects their audiences with Alberta-based businesses and organizations. This week we're brought to you by Pod Power. With Pod Power, our sponsors are making it possible for us to amplify the voices of Albertans and Alberta podcasters. This episode, the Edmonton Community Foundation is helping us give a Pod Power shout out to Overdue Finds. Overdue Finds is an Edmonton Public Library podcast. Bryce Crittenden and Carolyn Land host conversations about books, movies, music, pop culture, and other interesting news from around Edmonton. It's a great way to learn more about what's happening at EPL and about how you can use your library card to access all of EPL's in-person and online services. To listen and find out more about Overdue Finds, head on over to epl.ca/podcast. This week we're also brought to you by Rumi. Cold drafts, flickering lights, and where's that leak coming from? If you've ever wondered what's really going on in your home, Rumi's Ask a Home Inspector service can help. Connect with a certified professional home inspector by phone or video call and get your questions answered. Rumi will let you know what's easily fixable with a little DIY, or when you might need to call in some professional help. Visit rumi.ca, that's RUMI.ca, and book your Ask a Home Inspector appointment today. Let's jump right into it, actually, here, then. So this is how we start. It's Tobias, our young Tobias, is out there in the middle of the square and shouts out, "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Do you wake up every morning in shame and despair to discover your pillow is covered with hair, what ought not to be there? Well, ladies and gentlemen, from now on you can waken at ease. You need never again have a worry or care. I will show you a miracle marvelous rare. Gentlemen, you are about to see something what rose from the dead on the top of my head."
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Do you wake every morning in shame and despair to discover your pillow is covered with hair? What ought not to be there? Well, ladies and gentlemen, from now on you can waken with ease. You need never again have a worry or care. I will show you a miracle marvelous rare. Gentlemen, you are about to see something what rose from the dead. On the top of my head.
I always love the intro to this, the musical intro for it. It's like very magical and majestic. It almost seems like the intro music to a magic act that's about to happen.
Yeah.
And then it's just like some young dude with a drum banging away with a wig on his head.
I have to say this. There's no way for me to prove this is true, but you just have to. Everyone has to believe me. When I had been, of course, listening to Sweeney Todd for years and years and years, and I watched the Tony Awards this one year, and this new show called Urinetown comes out, and I'm like, oh, this seems like a cool show. I'm going to buy Urinetown. And there is a character that, whatever, there's the first or second song. He's like, where do I know that voice? I know that voice somewhere. And eventually I was able to like retcon it, or not retcon it, but like go through my memory banks like, oh, that's Tobias from Sweeney Todd. And then I did do a double check, deep dive, like cross-reference on the internet, and I was totally correct just by someone's voice. So
yes, you were.
He's also
in Sideshow,
which I don't know very well. I know the people who are in it like one song, but
I mean, it's mostly just a belt fest, but he's in it.
Sure.
He's like the carnival barker or whatever his name is. But I actually saw a cabaret at 54 Below that Ken Jennings was a part of, and he talked about Urinetown and his part in, because he played two parts. He played Bobby's father at the beginning, and then he played another character later on in the show. And the character that he played later on in the show was sort of one of the more rebellious poor people who was always kind of antsy and trying to do, more violent, vicious stuff. And the director told him, like, your character is evil, but he's evil in a musical. So take that and run with it. And Ken Jennings was like, Ken Jennings, for anyone who needs a visual here, Ken Jennings is a very short man with a thick, I think it's the Irish accent. Like it's like or maybe it's Scottish. I think it's Scottish accent.
Yeah, it's a very unique voice. By the way, not the person who won a lot on Jeopardy either. It's a different Ken Jennings.
Yes, very different Ken Jennings. But very short, squat man, the wide face. Just look. He's exactly who you'd imagine Tobias to be, like a man boy. And he goes, so I don't know, being evil in a musical. So I decided evil bevels in a musical. So like I always stand at a bevel, and I get like he's like the
so
smallest
funny.
little man in the world. So just like always see this man with like sort of a dad bod, always beveling with his like arms in. It was so funny. Evil bevels.
Always remember to bevel. Yeah, always remember to bevel.
It's the one thing missing from Sweeney Todd. The judge doesn't bevel.
Yeah, that's my notes for the original Sweeney Todd. Could use more beveling, to be honest.
100%.
I mean, I just like to go through occasionally, like, there are some fun little rhymes here as we go through Shame and Despair with Covered with Hair, which then goes down with Worry or Care, Marvelous Rare. So he's kind of reusing that type of rhyme scheme going on there. And then ending on the couplet, of course, from What Rose from the Dead on the Top of My Head. Something that I'll be mentioning next week in the episode on the contest. Unlike what is quote unquote proper screenwriting, in lyric writing, you often will see people write it out in incorrect grammar or English and not just say like, has a Cockney accent or like speaks in Russian or something like that. And so he has fun using that in his rhyme schemes here in this song too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a very exciting moment, musically speaking. And because, it's Tobias riling up a crowd of Londoners to get them excited about a new piece of merch from Pirelli. I also love that plot wise in this moment, Sweeney needs to get business in order to eventually get the judge into the shop. So he takes this opportunity to sort of, this Pirelli that everyone apparently knows and loves and thinks is so great, I'll take him down in 5 seconds flat. And it's not like Pirelli's going around offering shaves and Sweeney's like, I can do it better. It's Pirelli selling merch. And and the only way Sweeney can get his attention is by undermining the quality of the merch.
That's right.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. Who's the dude who does the food with the spiked hair? He like goes all over the country.
Guy Fieri.
Yeah. It's like challenging Guy Fieri to a cook-off, but the only way you get his attention is like going on Twitter and blasting his like salad dressing. That's
pretty watery salad dressing, honestly, buddy.
Yeah, I think there's some ink in there and maybe some other fluids.
The other thing I think that needs to be mentioned here too, we constantly are talking about in this season how a melody or a lyric will show up and then there will be echoes of that throughout the show. Like the obvious one here is God That's Good that comes out later on. And what I love about that kind of like, it's not a juxtaposition, but basically that calling back to this, we know after the song is finished that, he's selling snake oil. Like this is not anything that makes anything. And when we get to God That's Good, the subtext being it's like, these aren't real pies. Like these are not good. What's being sold here.
God That's Good. No, I think they are meant to be good because we get testimonies from the people eating them saying that that's good. But
sure,
I think
maybe the better way to say that is that they're not selling what they're saying they're selling. Yeah, that's probably absolutely the better way to say it. She is
selling meat pies. She just hasn't told them exactly what the meat is. One other thing I want to say before we continue onwards with Tobias, having now listened to 2 episodes of this series, which we are recording this the day that Barbara and his wife came out. People need to remember that Sweeney's not the one who comes up with the ideas for the pies. He's not even the one who makes them. All he does is slit the throat. Like Mrs. Lovett comes up with the idea. And for anyone who's like trying to find justice for Mrs. Lovett, hashtag justice for Lovett, she's the one who literally strips the meat off the bones and grinds them up. Like she is a sociopath. She's a charming sociopath, but she's a sociopath.
Yeah, she is the real evil one in this show. I mean, Sweeney does kill people. Like, that should not be swept under the rug. But the mastermind behind everything, it is Mrs. Lovett then in that case.
Yeah. I mean, he's driven to madness in Act 2, which is why he does it. Act 1, I mean, his only objective in Act 1 is just to get revenge on the judge. He has no intention of killing anybody else. And anything he does until the end of Act 1 is to get to that moment. So he doesn't start off evil. He starts off just incredibly bruised.
I'm not evil. I was just born this way. Yeah.
Society made him this way, Kyle. Come on. Why are you acting brand new?
Okay, so this is what Tobias continues singing. He says, scarcely a month ago, gentlemen, I was struck with an horrible dermatologic disease. Though the finest physicians in London were called, I awakened one morning amazed and appalled to discover with dread that my head was as bald as a novice's knees. I was dying of shame till a gentleman came, an illustrious barber, Pirelli by name. He gave me a liquid as precious as gold. I rubbed it in daily like what I was told, and behold, only 30 days old.
Scarcely a month ago, gentlemen, I was struck with a horrible dermatologic disease. Though the finest physicians in London were called, I awakened one morning amazed and appalled to discover with dread that my head was as bald as a novice's knees. I was dying of shame till a gentleman came, an illustrious barber, Pirelli by name. He gave me a liquid as precious as gold. I rubbed it in daily like what I was told, and behold, only 30 days old.
There is actually a lyric change here that I don't think it's in Hat, but starting with the George Hearn Patti LuPone concert onwards, I think Sondheim has implemented this change, is instead of horrible dermatologic disease, I think it's now mysterious oriental disease.
Yeah, strange oriental disease, I think is what it says.
Yeah. And there's a reason for that change, and you think about it, because the way that any country kind of thinks of foreign items is, two ends of the spectrum. exotic and luxurious, and then scary and dangerous. And especially with, English speaking countries like America and the UK, countries where their customs are so different from ours and speak different languages. It's either, they have secrets that we need to learn, or like they have weapons that we need to, or things to unleash that we need to stop. So this song actually, with that lyric change, does both of that, because you have Pirelli, who's quote unquote from Italy and has the secrets of his miracle elixir. It's like, well, it must be good. He's from Italy. And then Tobias is also using that same mentality of Asia to make people fearful of anything outside of the UK that could possibly affect them. So use this magical elixir here. It's just like, yeah, it's using both fear and I can't think of the other word. It's been a long day, Kyle. But
no, that's fine.
Fear and love of the unknown to sell this one product.
You see that even in our culture now, of like the same culture can be something, like we say, is alluring and something that we want, and at the same time is the scapegoat if anything goes wrong. So it's
100%.
It's this weird dynamic that goes on there. I'm glad you explained it that way. And I don't know, is that just you coming up with that, or did you actually read that somewhere?
No, that's me. That's me being smart.
Okay. What do you mean smart? I only bring that up because it was only this in the last couple of days when I went into that 2005 version to re-listen to the song, and it really bugged me that they had changed this lyric specifically, because it's like, ooh, that seems like unnecessarily racist to throw into this show. But I mean, not that I don't think that that wouldn't have happened back in this time, but it's like, why change the lyric? Why the impulse to change the lyric? But I think you're probably right, especially if they're selling tinctures and ointments and stuff like that. Why not bring that kind of idea in? I
mean, I'll be honest. I still prefer dermatologic. I think you could also argue that maybe dermatologic would not be a word that Tobias would know, but also I think you can also justify dermatologic as a director and director by saying, there are probably things in this speech that Tobias has had to memorize from Pirelli, listing off to him, because this whole thing is, Tobias is working for Pirelli, making absolutely no money. And, the only thing that keeps him from the street is doing what he's told. And so he's both a natural salesman while also being a bit of a robot at the same time. And you see that when you get to God That's Good, because the intro to God That's Good is exactly the same musically as it is here, obviously with some different lyrics. So, he has his pitch. He has what he knows can work. And then, he has to sort of improvise from there. And then as we learn, he's not the best improviser, because once faced with a hiccup, he pretty much fumbles the ball immediately. Yeah, he can't really stray from the script that much. I don't think it's a necessary change. I do understand it, and I'm not mad about it. And I think it's racist in the sense that, that time is as racist as any other time, you know?
I should say that this is completely cut out of the movie. Like, this entire section is cut out of the movie version. And then just two small lyric changes that I don't think mean anything. Honestly, it doesn't even... I'm just bringing it up because it's just interesting, I find, when different recordings have different words. But in the 2005 revival, instead of saying... This was in the first section. Instead of saying, from now on, you can waken at ease, they actually say waken with ease. So there's a small little change there.
Yeah.
And then also in that 2005 revival, they say, instead of only 30 days old, they say less than 30 days old. Some small little things here.
I think those are changes that have pretty much stayed with the stage version ever since. Because I remember the less than 30 days old at both the pie shop and the concert with Emma Thompson. And I was like, I guess this is where we're at now. I prefer only 30 days old, but I guess less than 30 days old is technically more impressive because, it's less amount of time. Yeah, I mean, there's the reason why that whole section, the scarcely a month ago, gentlemen, why that's cut from the movie is, again, we have to get to the point. Like, this song is not narratively that important.
Right.
The goal of the scene is to get Sweeney to topple Pirelli as a barber. And
honestly, it's weirdly like the contest is actually more important in the context of the show.
Absolutely. We have to get to Pirelli's miracle elixir to establish, that Sweeney and Lovett are making themselves known in this situation. And we allow it to go on as long as it does in the stage show. Again, because as we mentioned before, we are much more forgiving of the unrealistic in a stage show. Our concept of time and of what's real just goes away. And also because Sondheim is just such a good writer and the lyrics are so clever, we allow him like those extra verses where he can just sort of show off. And musically, like there's a pulse to it. It has a whole structure, which I enjoy. But yeah, the movie cuts that second moment and a couple of other verses after this because it's like, yeah, let's just get to it. Let's get Pirelli out. Let's get the contest happening so we can keep it moving.
Right. Now, this is our X-rated content for this episode, which is the how do you like the line as bald as a novice's knee?
I don't know how it's how do you feel about it, Kyle?
I mean, honestly, I think this is just fun, clever lyric writing in a way. I mean, without having to be like overtly, I don't know, lewd about it. It's like, okay, we get it. Like he's being cute and stuff here, and it's a great metaphor. I don't know, I like it.
Well, let me ask you this: is he saying bald as a novice's knee because they're on their knees all the time praying and being okay because of God or because of sexual stuff as well?
I think the ideas of sexual stuff is really what he's talking about. I mean, they're in St. Dunstan's Square, so I guess you could read it two ways. But
yeah, I always took it to mean like they're on their knees praying all the time, so like there's no hair there anymore because of the chafing. But I don't know; it could have multiple meanings. And I do like in the original cast recording, you hear the crowd laugh at this because it's meant to be a joke, whether it's, a more religious joke or it's a blue joke, they laugh anyway because it's implication. It's not outspoken. He's not like, hey, those sluts over at the Catholic Church over there. He's just like, bald as a novice's knee. And everyone's like,
Here's the thing. And to be honest with you, this is maybe just your poor influence in making me think dirty thoughts, Matt. I don't know.
Yay.
But I feel like it is there for that joke and for that double entendre, especially when it's followed up again with, I was dying of shame till a gentleman came. Yes, I understand that there's he's talking about the barber coming, but I think it's intentional that he's putting those lyrics together and then bringing you into the rest of the story. But maybe I'm just a dirty thinker and people can write in and tell me that I am.
I'll save you the trouble. You are. But I do love that that's where your mind goes now. I love that I have that influence on you. I mean, I also think I don't know if Tobias is capable of erotic thoughts. I think he's just such a simpleton in the best kind of way. I said it on the podcast before, like Anthony is so optimistic about the world and has every reason to be because he's, a straight male who has had absolutely no hurdles in life whatsoever, which is why he's such a dumb. Right. Tobias has had absolutely everything awful happen to him, and he's still optimistic about everything. His biggest crime is he just keeps putting his eggs in the wrong basket. He keeps trusting the wrong people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is a shame, but I know I love him anyway. I love him dearly. He's a great character.
So he continues on saying, 'twas Pirelli's miracle elixir. That's what did the trick, sir. True, sir, true. Was it quick, sir? Did it in a tick, sir, just like an elixir ought to do. How about a bottle, mister? Only costs a penny, guaranteed. And then the crowd all overlaps one another. So they're saying, penny buys a bottle. I don't know. You don't need. Let's go. Go ahead and tug, sir. Penny for a bottle, is it? Go ahead, sir. Harder. And then, does Pirelli's stimulate the growth, sir? You can have my oath, sir. 'Tis unique. Rub a minute, stimulating in it. Soon you'll have to thin it once a week. Penny buys a bottle, guaranteed. And then all the crowd again overlaps. So we're hearing, Penny buys a bottle, might as well. What you think? Go ahead and try it. What the hell? How about a sample? Have you ever smelled a cleaner smell? Isn't it a crime they let these urchins clog the pavement? Penny buys a bottle, does it? That's enough, sir, ample.
'Twas Pirelli's miracle elixir, that's what did the trick, sir. True, sir, true. Was it quick, sir? Did it in a tick, sir, just like an elixir ought to do. How about a bottle, mister? Only costs a penny, guaranteed. Does Pirelli stimulate the growth, sir? You can have my oath, sir, 'tis unique. Rub a minute, stimulating in it. Soon you'll have to thin it once a week.
Pardon me, man, what's that awful?
This is what I always bring up, and maybe this is the point to talk about Sondheim's views on choral singing. I defy anyone to know that that's what everyone is singing. And and like picking out those individual, you might get like one or two, but knowing that what everybody is saying at the same time, I think is basically impossible.
Yeah, I mean, I think what keeps it from being cacophonous is they're all pretty much singing the same melody line, just at different times, and obviously different lyrics. I didn't know they changed it to Pavement. I missed Sidewalk. I wish it was the Merchants 5 o'clock. That Sidewalks. Yeah. So Sondheim talks about this in Finishing the Hat. It's his only real note about this song, which is that he loves on a chemical level the sound of choral singing, but on a dramatic level, psychologically, he can't stand it because he says it's really rare when a whole group of people have the exact same thought at the exact same time. And, you have to find a way to justify it dramatically speaking. And he talked about, West Side Story, how anytime the Jets or the Sharks sang together, he tried to make the lyrics vague enough so that the specifics of what they were feeling wasn't the same, but the overall drive was something that they all shared. So we'll get to it later on in this song and as well with God, That's Good. He does all this counterpoint to make us understand that these are different people with different thoughts and opinions. And before anybody gets all up in arms, well, what about the ballads of Sweeney Todd? He says, that's a storytelling device. We need it to be crisp and clear. But also, when those songs were happening, the ensemble are not people. They're a Greek chorus, and they move as one. They're literally a dramatic device. Again, another reason why they wouldn't work in a movie.
I just like you coming out somewhere like choruses, not people. don't think about them.
No, Greek choruses, but Greek choruses aren't people. They weren't even people.
No, they're coming out and just telling you what's going on, right?
Oh yeah. He's like, stop it. These are not individuals. They're just they're simply here to tell you, hey, by the way, here's a story about a guy named Sweeney. It's fun. Yeah, you can't tell what everyone's singing at the exact same time. I do like that Tobias kind of cuts in all the time with asking to have the hair tugged, and we do find out later it's a wig, but he's doing it to show everyone that it's not a wig. But I think there's a lyric later on. I don't know if you got to it yet, but he has a lyric at some point where he's like, that's enough. You don't okay, you're done now. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. It's like stop tugging or something like that.
Yeah, he's like,
I forget. Yeah.
It's something along those lines, because that's his other bit. He's tugs her, and then later on, he's like, "Yeah, okay, we're good now."
I'll just read a very small section of this because this Sondheim's writing about that. He's using a lot of Rodgers and Hammerstein examples here. So he talks about do all the people in Oklahoma actually believe this one thing at the beginning, and then goes, "What about the picnickers in Carousel? Did every one of them have a real nice clam bake? Wasn't there anyone who had indigestion or a rotten time? Do all the Seabees in South Pacific think there is nothing like a dame? What about the misogynists in the group? Or if there are no misogynists, are there no homosexuals? If I pick on Rodgers and Hammerstein's shows as examples, it's only because their choruses are among the most effective, and their shows are revived so many times that the examples will be familiar." But he says, I love those choruses, but again, dramatically, don't make sense.
Well, I think also because he holds Hammerstein up to such esteem as a book writer, as a dramatic writer. He did so much to change how musicals are written and thought of that he's a little disappointed that did not extend to choral singing as well. But I think part of the difference there is that Hammerstein was also a showman and knew what an audience needed. And so while yes, sure, it's realistically not true that everyone would have a great time in the clam bake, it keeps the song emotionally engaging. There's a chemical level to that kind of music where your head leaves the building and your heart takes over. And that's sort of the difference between a show that's sort of critically praised, but maybe only runs a year, to a show that runs for 50 years. I talked about this with I talk about this with the British series a lot. The British shows that did so well are the ones that sort of embrace theatricality and just go for the jugular of emotions. So Les Mis, sure, there's so much you could pick apart, but the overall effect is so guttural and chemical, which is why it has run forever all over the world until everyone's dead. Right. And sometimes yes, but what about the mind? And everyone's screw the mind.
Give us more Blood Brothers. Yeah, that's right. That's what they want.
Hell, we were having such a nice time.
I know. Okay, so Tobias. Oh, no. The last thing I want to say, again, I really like this run they go on of him rhyming minute, in it, thin it. A very nice Britishism, in it.
Absolutely. I like it when Tobias has a lot of rhymes that aren't just with sir. I mean, basically, once Sondheim cracked that you add sir to the end, it can rhyme with elixir, with a lot of other things. Sky's the limit. It's I don't know if you ever watched 30 Rock, But
Yeah.
there's an episode where Jack talks about how he had a stutter as a kid. He said the kids used to call me stutter fingers, stutter milk pancakes. He goes, the whole butter thing really opened up a lot of doors for them. And that's what I think of every time with this song when it gets the elixir, quick sir, trick sir, slick sir. I'm like, oh yes, once Sondheim cracks that you add sir to the end, it's he's like,
It's
yeah,
all over.
opens a lot of doors.
Well, Tobias continues on and says, gently dab it, gets to be a habit. Soon there'll be enough, sir, somebody can grab it. See that chap with hair like Shelley's? You can tell he's used Pirelli's. Here's all the crowd stuff here. So let me have a bottle, make that too. Come to think of it, I could get some for Harry. Nothing works on Harry, dear, bye-bye. Go ahead and feel, mum, absolutely real, mum. How about a beer? You know a pub? There's one close by. You got all the hair you need now. That's no lie. Pass it by. I'm just passing by. Of course, then Todd and Mrs. Lovett have this kind of interchange here of like, pardon me, ma'am, what's that awful stench? Are we standing near an open trench? Must be standing near an open trench. And then Tobias cuts in and says, by Pirelli's miracle elixir. Not anything with slick, sir, soon sprouts curls. Try Pirelli's. When they see how thick, sir, you can have your pick, sir, of the girls. Want to buy a bottle, missus? And then again, a bunch of overlapping stuff. The one that's the most obvious, though, is like Todd and Mrs. Lovett going back again, right? Like, what is this? What is this? Smells like piss. Looks like piss. Piss with ink. That's basically the thing that you can hear from the soundtrack. But other things that are being said are, I'll take one. He smells like piss. Looks like piss. Wouldn't touch it if I were you, dear. What you think? Says it smells like piss or something. Penny for a bottle? Have you ever smelled a cleaner smell? How about a sample? How about a sample, mister? Give us back our money. Give us back our money. Did you ever give us back our money? Glad I didn't buy one. I can tell you. If you think that piss can fool a lady, you're mistaken. Give them back their money. Give them back their money. And then Tobias being like, never mind the madman, mister. Never mind the madman. And then, of course, they all come like, where is this Pirelli?
Once a week, gently dab it, gets to be a habit. Soon there'll be enough, sir, somebody can grab it. See that chap with hair like Shelley's, you can tell he's used Pirelli's.
Let me have a bottle, make that two.
What, mister, what's that awful stink?
Smells to me like piss and looks like hair. That smells like piss and looks like
Buy Pirelli's miracle elixir. Anything what slicks, sir, soon sprouts curls. Try Pirelli's when they see how thick, sir. You can have your pick, sir, of the girls. See Pirelli's.
That's a lot, I know I just read out there, but anything you want to pick up on?
Well, first of all, that's the magic of musicals for anyone who's like, I can't stand musicals. I'm like, try to get all that information across in 15 seconds without music. Yeah, I mean, there is a dramatic structure to the chorus in this. You know, everyone is skeptical at first, a little less skeptical, then they start buying it, and that's when Sweeney comes in and starts sowing the seeds of doubt with everybody, and it trickles through, like it percolates through everybody, but it's not immediate. It's not like he says piss and then everyone goes, what? It's, you know, he says it, two people say it, then it's 5, then it becomes 8, and then it becomes 10. Where is this Pirelli? And that, I think, Where's This Pirelli is the first time they all sing the same line together, which means that they are now growing as a mob mentality, which is really exciting.
Yeah, this is like a more subtle version of like Trouble from the Music Man, you know, where it's like pool is the issue here, right? Like really trying to make that connection between what's going on in the town, and here it's like, oh, it smells like this, and it kind of just trickles through the crowd, and eventually like mob mentality rules.
Yeah, something I realized while listening to this, because I had seen Wicked last week for the first time in like 18 years. Every time there's ensemble singing, it actually makes sense that they're all singing the same thing at the same time, because Wicked very much is also about how like mob mentality and like popular opinion are kind of the same thing. It's just a matter of positive or negative energy. And anytime the ensemble comes out to sing, they're either like a group of admirers of, you know, Glinda or the Wizard singing in unison how much they love them because they have no thoughts of their own, or they're a mob against Alphaba again because they have no thoughts of their own. And I was like, you know what, Stephen Schwartz, you have some choice lyrics in this show, but this actually fits really nicely with Sondheim's theory. Good for you.
Yeah, I will also say too, another thing I agree with you with about Wicked specifically is, boy, does that music hold up a book that is not the greatest.
100%. Maybe, I mean, spoiled because I saw the entire original company right before the show opened. No big deal. But
You can't see this, but he flipped his hair.
I did. My very long, luscious locks, like Shelley's, one might say. It's an effective show, but yeah, that book is rough. And the score is still great, even though there are a couple of lyrics that I'm like, we can do a little better. Yeah, Defying Gravity holds up, though. Defying Gravity holds up. Anywho, Shelley's. So who is Shelley? Who is
Percy
she, Kyle?
Shelley. It's actually a man. It's Percy Shelley is who they're talking about. I know. I'm just saying for the people out there who might not know, do a quick Google search, and he is supposedly a very attractive man back in this time. Was married for a while to Mary Shelley, the writer of Frankenstein. But yeah, he was considered a beauty, even though he wasn't really read all that much in his own lifetime. He became more popular afterwards.
Mm-hmm. He was just.
I'm an English major. I read Percy Shelley.
Of course you did. I mean, there's a portrait of him where you look at it and you're like, yeah, I can see that he was probably considered a very dreamy dude.
Yeah, you can see it.
Yeah, hair like Shelley's. Actually, when does Sweeney Todd take place? In like the 1850s?
Yeah. So this is a good question you asked that, because this stage show and what it's directly based off, the Christopher Bond version of Sweeney Todd, is set in 1850. However, the original Penny Dreadful that featured Sweeney Todd, even though those books were released in like the middle 1800s, took place in the 1700s. So they just updated him to be in Victorian times is all they did.
Okay. So I'm just trying to think then, because Percy Shelley died, I think, in like 1820 something. So I don't know if he was still of the pop culture relevancy at that point, or if like he might have gotten more well known after he died, like many artists do. So maybe that was it.
There were so few options back then, Matt. Come on, like who are you going to thirst after?
It's true. Listen, most of these people were dying at the age of 25 anyway, and their teeth falling out. So like, yeah, why not? Or they had scabs all over them. People. I was watching Tom Jones the other day, and I was like, oh, right. We always romanticize the past. But yeah, no, London was a disgusting place at this time.
Oh, I always say that, like, as someone who is like a huge fan of Victorian literature and that whole time period, like, you cannot pay me enough money if we invented like a time machine that I would want to go back to that time. It would stink so badly.
Absolutely.
And no one showering for like a few weeks at a time, like shaving their heads so the lights doesn't, like, ugh. I can't imagine a worse time.
Just disgusting. Anyway, so Shelley.
What do you know about Shelley?
That's all I know. I just know that Shelley had good hair. Shelley with the good hair. I think that was the original lyric in Beyonce's song, and she changed it to Becky. My sweet, naive, dumb teenagerhood that I was in. I remember this being the thing. I mean, I'd already heard Sweeney sing shit earlier in the show, and now they're talking about piss. I'm like, ooh, scandalous, these lyrics for this Broadway show. Yeah. There was definitely cursing on Broadway by this point. I think musicals maybe were a little more rare, but they happened because like Hair had come out 10 years earlier and Chorus Line a couple years before this. So like it's like not even like
sorry, I was going to say this even subject matter, right? Like you look at what was going on in Broadway and even like the adaptations of those plays in Hollywood, and like, well, we can't really say that he's gay, but like he is, but we can't say that in the movie version, but was very explicitly that's what was going on the stage version.
Yeah. People who go on about like Streetcar Named Desire and Cat in a Hot Tin Roof, I'm like, yeah, those movies are good, but they're not great because of like some major changes they make because of the Hays Code. Having Maggie the cat officially not sleep with Brick's best friend in the movie because Elizabeth Taylor wasn't allowed to do that. She had to be a good person in the end. She's like, no, he always thought we did, but we never did. I'm like, this movie officially now blows. But yeah, it's the subject matter of Sweeney Todd, and I think the sort of whole tone that it sets is what sort of makes so much of it so shocking, if that makes sense. Like a chorus line, you expect them to say shit because it's the 1970s. They're in the theater, and them talking about homosexuality makes sense. Something like Sweeney Todd, like you don't expect a musical in the Victorian era to be about cannibalism and say piss and shit.
Right. So especially because Oliver would have been out by now. So I mean, like that's really like the next best option that people would have thought about.
Oh, Oliver. Yeah, especially the stage version of Oliver, where it's like people complain about the movie being not gritty enough. I'm like, have you seen the stage show? Like, there is not a single gritty person in that show.
Everything has been buffed out. It's just like, well, let's sand that down and
for your kids' protection. Although I do love that the stage show ends with, dead bodies on the floor and Fagin's going off being like, can a man change? Who knows? Curtain, and then everyone else comes back on stage. Consider yourself at home. It's
rapturous applause.
Yeah. I think I made the joke on the podcast as well, where it's like Evita closing with, and then Evita's body disappeared for 15 years. What's new? Buenos Aires. It's just such a.
This is like, what is happening?
Yeah, such whiplash. Fun times.
All right, so this is how the song ends here then. So the crowd is going like, where is this Pirelli? What about my money, laddie? Yes, what about my money? Hand it back. We don't want no piss boy. Give it here. And Tobias like, let Pirellis activate your roots, sir. Keep it off your boots, sir. Eats right through. That's what Todd says. And the crowd's like, go and get Pirelli. Yes, get Pirellis. Use a bottle of it. Ladies seem to love it. And Mrs. Lovett says, flies do too. Crowd's getting more and more angry. Hand the bloody money over. Hand the bloody money over. And Tobias then goes, see Pirelli's miracle elixir. Grow a little wick, sir. Then some fuzz. The Pirelli's soon will make it thick, sir. Like a good elixir always does. Trust Pirelli's if your hair is sick, sir. Fix it in a nick, sir. Don't look grim. Just Pirelli's miracle elixir. That'll do the trick, sir. What about the money? If you've got a kick, sir. What about the money? Where is this Pirelli? Go and get Pirelli. What about our money? Tell it to the mixer of the miracle elixir. If you've got a kick, sir, talk to him.
Where's this Pirelli?
Where is this Pirelli? Pirelli's activate your roots, sir.
Keep it off your boots, sir. Eats right.
Go get Pirelli's. Pirelli's use a bottle of it. Ladies seem to love it. Flies do too.
And the bloody money over. And the bloody money over.
See Pirelli's miracle elixir. Grow a little wick, sir, then some fuzz. The Pirelli soon will make it thick, sir. Like a good elixir always does. Trust Pirelli's if your hair is sick, sir. Fix it in the nick, sir. Don't look grim. Just Pirelli's miracle elixir. That'll do the trick, sir.
What about the money?
If you've got a kick, sir.
What about the money? Where's the Pirelli? Go and get Pirelli.
Hand it to the mixer.
Take it to the
Talk to him.
It's a great ending. I mean, that last verse, again, it is both Sondheim showing off and also dramatically makes sense because Tobias is freaking out. He's panicking and he almost kind of feels like a robot glitching, like just kind of going like error, like he's going
right.
and or if you want to maybe treat Tobias more like a human being, imagine that he's got all these note cards and they're getting mixed up as he's panicking, and like all he can do is think of the keywords and the key phrases and go back and finally it gets too much and he's like, I'm not the dude who made this. Go talk to him. I'm done. I'm 5. I'm a 5-year-old and I'm reading off of cue cards. Go talk to that dude. I love, as I said, I'm not the biggest fan of George Hearn, although I do like him in this number. When you watch the video, I like that he actually speaks, this is piss with ink. And then if you watch the video with Emma Thompson, Bern Turfel, he oversins it. He goes, this is piss with ink. I'm like, dude, come on, be an actor. But
yeah, you need to sing this. Yeah.
If you watch the video, Angela Lansbury on Flies Do Too, she like goes behind George Hearn's back and calls her hand out. So she's pretending to be like a man in the crowd that no one can see, but they can only hear when she goes, flies do too. It's a very cool choice, especially because it's sung so low as it's written. So I always appreciate that. In a weird way, like this number builds, but because it's not meant to be its own separate thing, it's supposed to move into the next scene. Like it doesn't build to like a satisfying climax, even though like it does finish one in a way where like, yeah, no, that's probably how it should end. But because of how it's building, you're like, I feel like there should be a giant flourish here that there isn't. I don't know. Maybe that's just my own silly brain.
No, I think you're right. I think it does kind of just end, but then it's supposed to move on into the contest. And some recordings even have them together. Like they don't actually separate them into the track listings. It's just all one thing. About that showing off, though, I mean, you're not wrong in being like, we have, what is it? Elixir, and then rhyming with Wixer, Thixer, Nixer, Stixer, Kickser, Mixer. So, I mean, we have just a bunch of like, oh, Sir has unlocked this new rhyming couplet that I can use.
Yeah, the butter thing really opened a lot of doors for them. It is so clever. And But again, it's clear, Sondheim saw the connection and then just like ran with it till the cows came home. It's so good. Everything about it is so good. I mean, hot take, everything about Sweeney Todd, so good. But yeah, it's a combination of him being the cleverest lyricist of all time, still the greatest dramatic lyricist, because he could combine his wit with dramatically compelling action, and gives intention to the chorus, and nothing is ever the same twice in a row, if that makes sense. Like there's no moment where like the line that comes is sort of a repetitive line from before. Like the only reason why Tobias ever repeats stuff is because he's making a sale, but he has different angles. And then at the end, again, he's glitching. So he's going through everything that he's done before because he's panicking. It's a very actable song for a song that's not really about emotions or character development. It's just Sweeney and love it being trolls.
It is 100%. And, like if you really wanted to be nitpicky, which sort of have been in a couple cases this episode about like, I'm not going to speak for you, but I doubt this is probably anyone's like favorite song from the show. Maybe it is, but I mean, there's going to be very few people's like favorite song from the show. I know there's some purists out there, like every song in a musical has to be like this, like emotional change from the start to the end. But I don't know. Sometimes I go back to Richard Rodgers' idea. Like sometimes there's songs that you just need to have there. They're the fundamentals. Like they just need to be there to like, because you need a song there. And I kind of look at praise a little bit like that. Like we need to introduce this person, we need to introduce the concept and get to the kind of the more important part. So like, let's just do it and have some fun.
Well, I think you can look at this as part of a sequence. And this is a sequence that's necessary for the building blocks of Sweeney's plan. I mean, all of Act 1 of Sweeney is mostly just building blocks slowly coming together, because in terms of like character development, there really isn't any until the end of Act 1 for Sweeney. It's mostly just plot points. And you could even argue that all the plot points that come into play in Act 1 end up not mattering towards the end of Act 1. Like it all kind of comes crashing down. The House of Cards come crashing down. I'm mixing my metaphors, but who cares? Only for everything to kind of come back into place very quickly for Act 2. But that's also sort of the point. Anyone who's listening to my podcast right now, which when this episode comes out, I will have had my new series out on Janine Tesori. She talks about this a lot, which is that when she worked on Caroline or Change, George C. Wolfe said that audiences need what he calls idiot time, just like a moment to breathe, a moment to sit back for a second and be able to follow the rhythm, if not necessarily the nuances of what's happening. So when the authors need them to really pay attention again, they're recharged and they can do it. And so anyone who's like, every moment needs to move it forward. If you're the greatest writer in the world, you can probably mix that with idiot time, but you do need idiot time. It's important to have breaks for your audience. Even Michael John LaChiusa did it for Wild Party. Like if he can make that happen in Wild Party, no writer has any excuse. Add idiot space. And I would say this song is a bit of idiot space, not in that it's like worse than anything else in the score. It's, as we mentioned, it's fantastic, but there is no character development. There's no storytelling happening. It's 3 minutes of setup for the more important thing, which we said is the contest.
Idiot Time, by the way, was the subtitle to this podcast for a while, but decided against it. But what do you think, though? Like, as far as this song goes, is this for you personally then like top 5, middle 5, bottom 5? Like, where does it fit into the score for you?
It used to be like probably top 5 for me when I was younger, but that's because I had dreams of playing Tobias and I really wanted to master this song.
Hey, don't give up your dream, Matt.
Thank you. I moisturize twice a day in hopes that one day I can still play the role. Now, I don't know, maybe like top 10. It's musically very exciting. And as I said, like every time it begins, I get very excited about it. But also, I mean, my tastes change. There have been days where like I just listened to Greenfinch through Amos and Joanna on loop, and I don't even get to Priest. I'm just like listening to that sequence over and over again. Then I have tastes where like for some reason I'm just listening to Wait for an hour. Like I couldn't tell you. My tastes are weird. I would say on average this is probably like top 10, not top 5.
Gotcha.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I think for me, you're right in saying like my tastes have changed as time has gone forward. This is an entire shows, honestly, too. The older I get, like, I mean, the story I always tell is about how, like, as a teenager, when I first listened to Company, I was like, yeah, like I like some of the music, but I don't really get this. And then you become 30 and you're like, oh, I get this. And now I'm getting older, and now Follies is being the show. I'm like, oh, I really get this, which is like scary as you go on. But like for Sweeney is something that I've loved for so long. Yeah, I think I probably like this way more as a kid, and it's probably, I would say it's middle of the pack here for me. I don't think it's the worst.
Do you think there's anything that's the worst in Sweeney? Or worst?
No, I yeah, like I kind of probably phrased that wrong, but like I'm trying to think. I mean, yeah, I'm probably going to say like parlor songs or something like that. I probably will never fully enjoy it, but I like the idea of parlor songs more than I enjoy parlor songs.
Especially now that I think parlor songs in the contest, which you'll get to with both of them, they've been shortened since. Were, when you listen on the cast recording for Broadway, you're like, who said they could go on this long? Who sat there at that rehearsal room and went, yeah, sure, no, 10 minutes each.
Keep going.
Yeah, make it longer. Yeah, no, those two have been shortened, which is very good.
As a young person, I didn't really like Greenfinch and Linnet Bird, but I've really started to love that song too. The older I get too, I think there's lots of beauty in that. So things change as time goes on.
In fairness to you, Betsy Jocelyn on the video does not do a good Greenfinch. Greenfinch is also, I think it's so gorgeous, but Joanna's a hard role because it's similar to like Christine in Phantom, where she has to have sort of a youthful voice about her, but the role is such a classical soprano role that it's hard to find someone with that light sound, but also the technique to back it up. Because if they have the technique, they tend to sound a little more mature.
I agree with that. Yeah, you have to. It's a really hard. I think honestly, a hard role to be cast in for not just the performance aspect of it, but what I've noticed for newer Joannas, and I know that this is just like a new thing, but a lot of them also bring in, I think, much needed humor into the Joanna role, which I think just opened up and has like, oh yeah, like this is now a living, breathing person rather than just like the perfect entity that this person's going after. And I just kind of enjoy that too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what style you're going for with the show. I mean, the original was very grand guignol. I said that all wrong, but I don't care. Melodrama. And so, Joanna and Anthony were played very kind of surface level, which is fine. Again, it's all about the mechanics of the show and what pieces you need fitting anywhere. I love the Joanna in the movie. I think there's a really sad quality about her that's needed. I think, honestly, I would say one of the major things with Joanna that actresses need to tap into is how sad she is. She has a really awful life, and she's very aware that it's awful. And for the first act, she's kind of hopeless. She doesn't have any belief that she'll escape. And I think the humor for Joanna that I now see, like you do, actually really came from the Pie Shop production when they were doing Kiss Me. Yeah, because I mean, Sondheim, again, he doesn't, and you guys will talk about this more, but Sondheim, he doesn't have a lot of respect for either of those characters.
Sure.
He doesn't have respect for Young Love in general, but those characters in Sweeney Todd specifically, he's kind of like these two pretty dum-dums. And so he has all these jokes about how like they don't know each other. And like Joanna doesn't even know his name. And
that's the part I love is like, what's your name again? Like, that's,
it's like, I loved you even as I saw you, even as I still don't know your, I loved you even as I saw you, even as it does not matter that I still don't know your name. And then when she finds out it's Anthony, I don't know if it was the actress or if it was just the way it was directed. Joanna and Anthony were on the bar for the Pie Shop, and he goes, Anthony, and she goes, Anthony, and they look out and she's so excited, and she did like a little point to him on the I'll marry Anthony Sunday, and she's like a little like his name's Anthony. It was just like very schoolgirl crush kind of thing, and I was like, I enjoy the humor that you have found here.
Yeah, absolutely. I will also continue to say this anytime it kind of comes up, no matter if I was like sequestered away, like a judge had stolen me and locked me in. If a young Victor Garber came into my life and says, I'll take you away, I'll be like, sure you will. And I will be calling with you now.
With those mutton chops, you would?
Well, maybe not with the mutton chops specifically, but
okay. I mean, but yes, young Victor Garber could step on my throat if he wanted to. You can bleep all of that out. But yeah, I mean, I look at the photos of him in that production. I'm like, cut the mutton chops and do whatever you want.
Matt, thank you so much for joining me here today. We've mentioned it a few times, but if people did want to stay in contact with you, see what you're up to, what's the best way for them to do so?
You can follow me on Instagram at Matt Koplik. usual spelling. I'm sure Kyle will spell it correctly for this episode. That is my only real form of social media. I'm hoping to have a website at some point this year. I say hoping like I have no autonomy over it. Like I can make it happen. I will make it happen some point this year. But if you want to reach out to me or follow me in any way, you can do that. I have my podcast, Broadway Breakdown, which Kyle has been on. He will be on it again at some point when I get my life in order for it and know what I'm doing after this Janita Tesori series and what I'll be covering. Yeah. So that's me.
Perfect. Now, because you have listened to a couple episodes already, you'll probably know what the hardest question is that I'm asking everyone here this season, which is, what is your favorite pie?
Oh, my favorite pie. My favorite pie to eat would be blueberry pie. My favorite pie to make, because I also
okay,
bake
I didn't know where this was going. It's like, what other thing can you do with pie? Okay.
No, my favorite pie to make is a banana chocolate mousse pie that I make because I don't actually have to bake that much of it. But I also say my dad's favorite pie in Sweeney is shepherd's pie peppered with actual shepherd on top.
Right.
He maybe quotes that. He probably quotes that twice a week.
When you have a good joke, you have to keep leaning in on it. That's great.
100%. You want to know what makes a joke funnier? Saying it as many times as possible.
If you are my niece and nephew, that is correct. It's like, Uncle Kyle, did you hear what he said? It's like, I heard what you said. I'm not going to fake laugh for you, though.
But Uncle Kyle, aren't you glad he didn't say banana? Aren't you?
I am. I'm very glad. Thank you for listening. You can send emails to puttingittogetherpodcast@gmail.com, and you can follow Sondheim Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, and you can support the show on Patreon by going to patreon.com/puttingittogetherpodcast. Thank you to the Alberta Podcast Network, to Pod Power, and to Rumi this week. Putting It Together is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and pretty much anywhere you can get podcasts from. Consider subscribing so that you never miss an episode. Next week, we're going to be jumping into the contest. It's only going to feel a little bit like I'm pulling your teeth. As always, a big thank you to the great Chris Taniguchi, who designed the podcast artwork, and Nick Driscoll for composing our theme music. Well, we've reached the end of our episode. Yes, I know. Goodbye for now.